Yo, you guys, this is Blacklist of the Abyss, and you're watching my review for World Trigger Chapter 155. Now, this review is a bit late, but that's just because I'm taking the GMATs next Friday, so I've been studying a lot this week. So my reviews will probably be late next week as well. But yeah, that's just how it is, but I should be back on schedule relatively soon. But let's just get into this chapter because it was pretty freaking good. All right, OG caught up to Oki. All right, but he didn't really get a chance to do anything. So Oki ended up meeting up with Satoshi and Ikoma and fighting Yuma 3-on-1. He's Yuma. Okay, so even fighting 3-on-1, he was still doing relatively well for himself with Meteor, Whirlwind, and freaking sniping all together. They only managed to take his right hand, right? So, yeah, his right hand. It looked like his left hand at first, but then ended up being his right hand, as you saw like the next page after that. So, yeah, but the bad thing is he's on borrowed. The good news is that that's all he lost, right? But the bad news is he's on borrowed time now because he's leaking Tryon, right? So he's got to move quickly. But I'm sure he'll get help at some point because, as we see in the rest of the chapter, Kashio ends up catching up to Chika and trying to fight her. She tried to slow him down with some tracking lead bullets, from Hound. But Kashio, they had planned for this already, and their OG squad had in their meeting ahead of time. And Kashio decides that the best course of action is to shoot back at her and force her to use her shield, because if you have your shield up, you can't use Hound at the same time. Okay, or at least with the type of shield that Chika uses anyway, you can't use Hound at the same time. And if you can't use Hound, you can't shoot bullets with Hound, right? So. But Chika did have a good way to avoid getting beaten because it looked like Kashio was about to get her. All right, but then she just goes and she jumps over nothing, just over air. But Kashio thinks she's jumping over wires, so he thinks that he's in a wire zone right now. So he stops entirely. Okay, and he's like looking around. He starts cutting like the air and stuff. He's like, "Wait a second, there are no wires here." So then he realized he was just getting tricked. All right. And now Chika's put more distance in between them, and that's extra time he spent cutting at the air gave Osamu enough time to show up, as predicted last week by moi. Okay, and the two of them together, they had some great chemistry here. Okay, while Kashio was focused on Osamu, Chika started shooting at him again, and she managed to catch him in the leg a few times, and then Osamu used the thruster to thrust towards Kashio. Kashio decided to shoot at him, but Chika used her own shield to block for Osamu, which allowed him to go and cut Kashio down and get the point for Tamakoma 2. Okay, so now Tamakoma is up 2-0. OG squad has one member remaining, OG himself. OG shows up at the end of the chapter and attacks Osamu, so it'll be 2-on-1 there. They were going to try and get to a wire zone after that, and they still might try. But seeing what happened to Kashio, OG is definitely going to be more careful and probably do everything he can to prevent them from actually going somewhere. But I'm looking forward to seeing how quickly, if at all, Osamu and Chika can defeat OG, and then maybe going back up Yuma so that we've got 3-on-3. Okay. And one last thing I want to mention is that I'm really glad to see what they did in this chapter with the whole pretend that a wire's there when it's really not. Because this whole thing about people getting paranoid about the possibility of wires being there, that was one of the original selling points of the trigger. Alright, both for me and for Osamu. Alright, so I was glad to see that strategy used here. And I didn't see it coming at all, because we've seen them work so much already that you just forget that they can be used even when they're not there, kind of, So they aren't actually being used, but like they're being used psychologically. All right, so it was good to see that strategy put into place in this chapter. So for that, I will give this chapter an 8 out of 10. It was good because we got to see Chika on her own still manage to prevent Kashio from taking her out. putting that strategy into place, and we got to see Osamu and her work together to take out Kashio. Plus Yuma 3-on-1 is surviving, so that in itself is cool. So I will give this chapter an 8 out of 10, and that is that, you guys. I know I mentioned in the Taboo Tattoo review that I wasn't doing a review of Nisekoi, of Nisekoi's ending, and I decided not to do it on Bleach either because it annoyed me and I didn't want to just rant on Bleach, so I just decided not to do it. I know I said a few weeks ago that I would, but I'm just not going to because I just don't feel like ranting about it. I just don't feel like it. So yeah, I just wanted to put that update in there. But yeah, that is that, you guys. Chapter gets an 8 out of 10. Rate, comment, subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at BlacklistOTA. And I will see you guys next time.